We're all familiar with the three whats: what it is, what it can do for me, and what does it cost. Tyler Rickenaugh, Country Financial, can help you find the answers with insurance coverage to help protect what's most important to you, all at a price you can afford. So while you're juggling work and kids while trying to keep an eye on your financial future, Tyler Rickenaugh, Country Financial, will make sure they are the first ones there when you need them most. Many young parents leave pages of instructions for the sitter when they have their first date night after the baby is born. But only 36% of parents with minor children in the U.S. have any sort of plan to protect their children if they don't come back. Don't be part of that 64% without planning. At the Wilson Law Group, located in Madison, estate planning is all we do.
Fostering deeper relationships, influencing behavior change, developing resilience. You're about to start winning. Here is your host, Christine Bright.
Welcome to Parenting Game. I am so glad you are here. All right, another fun episode for me. Again, I am going to be the guest, and my colleague Dan Presser is going to be doing the interviewing. Dan, thank you again for coming and doing this. I'm a little bit more relaxed on this one.
Good.
It was a little bit nervous being the first go, but
I didn't think you were nervous at all.
you were quite
You're
nice.
great at this.
I was waiting for you to bring the hammer down and have these hard-hitting questions, but you were
don't
very
know me
kind.
very well then. Yeah. I just like to talk to people, really, Christine. So
I know.
It's good to be here and talk with you and learn more about you and
Thank
your
you.
company and the parenting game. So I want to just get going right away and learn more about your family.
Yeah.
I learned a little bit last time, but tell folks out there who might not have seen that about your family.
Yeah, so I have a son who's 27 years old, military kid, music kid. I was bragging on him a little bit in the last episode,
Yeah.
but he does funeral honors as his full-time gig with Army National Guard. Absolutely loves it.
What instruments does he do?
So he's a percussionist.
Okay.
He also does guitar, and has become pretty good at it,
Yep.
bass guitar. So in some of the bands within the Army, so he plays concert band, jazz band, rock band.
What's his favorite?
So he loves playing guitar because he hasn't had all the years of practicing, and that's all he did. So that one's just kind of fun for him. But he does still love playing percussion. So he plays percussion when it's concert band. He plays drums when it's jazz band. But when it's rock band, he plays the bass guitar.
Does he like it when you brag on him, or is he going to go, Mom?
No, he's pretty good because he's trying to get his name out there. So he's a little more open to it than
Yeah.
he used to be. So.
And in your line of work, you have more than just your biological son. You have other kids, really,
yeah.
right?
So I always say that I counted them up, and I would say that I've had 15 now that I've intimately,
Wow.
worked with. Have a former foster son
Yep.
that I still keep in contact with. He's 22 and lives in Missouri.
So what's he do?
So right now he is kind of just working. He just loves working. And I forgot where he just switched jobs. So he's just kind of working and is into rebuilding classic cars.
Cool.
So that's.
I would like this guy.
Yeah. So he's working to pay enough to fix up the cars, and then then he'll sell them, and
That's
so
pretty
that's his gig right now.
Well, so your family is obviously very important. I would say probably the most important thing, right? But your company's important too. How did you start that?
So the idea had been swimming around for quite a while, but during the pandemic, when there was just a real need for parenting support, I had the opportunity with Fairway Mortgage to offer monthly webinars and support to their employees. And so that kind of forced me to take the idea and make it into a reality.
Yeah.
And then over the course of that year, I had some really great friends who pulled information out of me so I could get written material. So now we actually have the Parenting Game Playbook, which is, if you get coaching or consulting from me, you get that playbook.
Do you have like an online telestrator? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, do you know that would be like really
go.
cool. But I'd have to learn the actual football plays. The guy who designed it for me was like amazing, and he actually found. I mean, they're real like different plays that are on the different. And I'm like, it would be really probably helpful if I knew what those plays actually
guys like
were.
me would be like, oh, it's a sweep. It's
I know. I have.
Right.
It's not one of these days. A dad who's taking, the training is gonna like call me out on that, and I'll just maybe try to spin it and say, well, you seem very knowledgeable. You tell me what kind of a play that is.
See, that's smart. Always ask the question, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the branding about it. But what do you teach parents about through the parenting game?
So we have 3 different sections.
Yeah.
And again, with parenting game, I wanted it to kind of be attractive to guys. So it is set up like a playbook, like if you were learning a sport. Mm-hmm. So the first section is the fundamentals. With any sport, there's just some things you need to know to be successful. And one of those things is the stance. With every sport, in baseball, you have a certain way you got to approach the play. In football, there's a way to be at the line of scrimmage. And if you don't get into that posture, making that touchdown or hitting that home run is not going to happen. So with the stance, that's all about parents learning to have a positive stance with their kids.
Oh, that's hard sometimes.
Even when you've had a history of maybe some very challenging behaviors, or you have a teen that's, really, gone down the wrong path. But if we take a stance of not being positive with them and constantly seeing, what they're not doing well and speaking that over them, the success of changing those behaviors or getting them on the right path is very slim.
Yeah.
Whereas if we're in that positive stance, it will happen. You'll finally get that home run. So that's the one fundamental. The second one is the language.
I was going to say, that's the next thing that comes to my mind is because so many of us, I say it to myself all the time, or to my wife, I'll say, I sound just like my dad. Those things come out of your mouth that you know your parents said to you, and you're going to say them to your children, and now that they're grown-ups, you say it like your dad said to you as a grown-up. So language is so important, right?
And there's two folds with that. For one, language that's not helpful, that doesn't build safety in a conversation. Whenever the word why is in a sentence, now you're on defense. Mm-hmm. Another is that we tend to throw out a lot of words for the same behavior that can cause a lot of confusion, or we're using words that really don't fit, and our kids are smarter than we think, and let me tell you, they're like going, whatever,
Can you give us a for instance?
For one, like with behavior, we can throw out a lot of things like you're being mean, or, that's disrespectful. And, little kids, you throw the word disrespectful at them, they're like, what does that mean?
Right.
Behavior really fits into 3 categories. It's either helpful or not helpful. It's either kind or unkind. It's either safe or unsafe. It's really it.
Simple.
And if we're all using the same language, everybody understands what's going on. It's the same thing. You can't use, the term of field goal when you're playing baseball. Like, go out and hit that field goal, right? Confusion. So it's all about getting some common language that everybody understands. And that's the beauty of this, is like, this is language that your little itty bitties will know, and then your teens will know. And it stops arguments, right? Because if you use a word that's debatable, now you're setting yourself up for an argument. But when you go to a child and say, hitting your brother was unkind, they're not going to argue that.
Yeah, why'd you hit your brother? What was that? Yeah,
and ask it, that was unkind. What could we do better next time? So the language is about that. I talked about this in the last episode, but I'm so passionate about it. I'm going to say it again. It's the language of help me understand what was or what is going on with what's ever going on in the moment. And inviting a conversation instead of the typical, why did you do that? And what's the typical answer? Oh.
Depending on what age they are.
And then it just escalates from there, right?
Yeah.
And I'm so confident, I've used this from little kids all the way through my personal relationships, my relationships with my mom. And I can honestly say I have never been lied to. There might be a long pause. Sometimes I've had to just sit, and just wait for the answer. But I've always gotten the truth. And just another part of this, I always tell parents, be ready to get what you get and handle it with care. And because sometimes it's about you, and that can be the hardest.
Sometimes the truth hurts, or the truth can bite.
Yes, and just handle that with care. So it's getting the family using common language that everybody understands, so this isn't all this confusion.
Yeah, that's great.
The last fundamental is the practice.
Yeah, and last time you mentioned that too.
Yeah, so this is how our brains work. You have to practice behavior change. That's why parents get so frustrated. It's because, well, how many times do I have to tell you? A lot. Their brain is developing a new neural pathway, and that doesn't happen instantly.
Right.
I mean, how long does it take you to build that habit to start working out?
Or learn how to hit a curveball or whatever, right?
Or to ride your bike, to read, and I get it, right? Because there's reputation linked to that. That's how you view yourself as a parent. And for one, we just want that undesirable behavior to stop. Mm-hmm. But we're putting an unrealistic expectation, and then we can start saying some words that we don't mean that end up shaming them and just hurting their identity. So it can be a very negative, rabbit hole that you end up going down.
So how do you help them develop those skills to kind of make those work?
So so that's with the coaching, and really in the beginning it's consulting, because I'm just telling you what to do and say. We have an overarching philosophy, like with each of them, like having a positive stance. But then I give you actionable strategies on how to do that to get you going. And then, from there, you can start developing strategies that work within your family and how your family runs.
So do you have to continually follow through as a coach and as a parent? I mean, are you always following through with people to kind of make sure they're staying on task? Maybe that's not the right term.
Yeah, well, there is some buy-in, and I'm very clear. Like, if you want this to work, we're looking at like a 4 to 6 month period before you really see things start clicking. Now, they're not staying with me that whole time. They do their coaching session, and then I said, if you follow through on this and keep doing what you're doing and making it part of your language, you will all of a sudden just see it kick in. My typical track record when I'm working intimately with a family is I can change a family in about 4 months.
Wow.
But I've done this for 20 years. I teach it, I coach it. It comes much more natural to me now. Whereas with other parents, I said, you could be 6 months. Depending on how intentional you are, you might be looking, at a year. Again, I'm telling you it works. It's your commitment level that's going to be how fast, it goes through. And I do. With my clients, I still am in contact with every client that I've had, and they'll reach out once in a while. And, it's those little reminders. They're like, oh, yeah, I've really gotten away from asking, help me understand.
Well, sometimes as parents, we have higher expectations than maybe are attainable too.
Yes.
Or like you said, you got to practice to get to that expectation.
Yeah, and I said, I do this for a living, and, people pay me very well, and I still have my bad days, but then that's the opportunity, as I said, some other stuff I teach, to be really good at asking forgiveness from your kids and teaching your kids how to show grace, when that happens. But yeah, you're going to have to apologize. I do, with the kids that I work with. I'm human. I have my days where, I've just had it and I kind of lose it. And then I go, then I model what I teach. You know what? I'm going to go take a break. I'm going to go make a cup of tea or a cup of coffee. That was not okay, what I just did.
Yeah.
We'll be back, and we'll talk.
So you're being accountable, where accountability has to fall into line for everybody involved.
And
right?
and I tell parents, you'll never undermine yourself. I mean, there is that really misnomer out there that if I apologize to my kids, I'm undermining myself. I tell you what, my son and I's relationship is so strong because we apologize to each other. Like, I mean, we've had some things where I think he'll be okay about telling me this one, but he wanted to buy a Mustang.
Oh.
And I was going to have to co-sign. And I said no. And what that poor kid is, I know a lot of random stuff. And I knew that it was a front-wheel drive, and it had a low,
Clearance.
Profile.
Yeah, right.
I said, you're going to get stuck. And it doesn't take much for them
I
to get
had a Mustang once, so I can attest to that.
Yeah, and and he got mad.
They're great cars, though.
But within about 20 minutes, he called me back. And he's like, Mom, first, I'm sorry. You didn't deserve that. Second, I Googled, and you are right. I don't need a Mustang. But, that was over us, me as a parent taking that initial stuff of being humble enough, to apologize. And it's never, and even with the kids that I work with, I mean, we have such strong bonds that, I never shy away from that, now.
So we weren't going to talk about this at all, not that you mentioned or didn't mention it, but you just mentioned Google. And the internet makes parenting a little harder, it seems like sometimes, because there's always information at your fingertips.
There is. And, and that's what I tell people too, is that, then parents end up overwhelming themselves. And it's like, do I go with, love and logic? Do I go with parent management training? Do I do, collaborative and proactive approach? Like what? And, I have read them all. I've tried them all. A lot of this was intentionally developed over a 3-year period of actually being in a home and working and throwing out what didn't work, and keeping what actually did work.
Hands-on experience.
Not that any of those are bad or anything, but what it was is a lot of times people are reading these books, but I'm like, what do? I get the concept, but how do I do it? And that's really what I focused in on with parenting games. It's like, I'm gonna give you language on what to do right now. And then, of course, we go into more of a coaching style then, and they can build off of that. But these are, and I had the luxury too, with working with these families intimately, like to stand back and say, why did that become all big and a mess, that conversation?
Yeah.
What if we didn't have to reward for everything? What if we didn't have to punish? So I really had a unique opportunity. And then working with the family, I could try it. Well, let's try this, let's try this, let's try this language. And, I was working with a family where I started, and they had a 6-month-old and they had a 6-year-old. And I was with them 2.5 years, to see this grow. And then I had opportunities to work with other families with older kids and then try it out there. And this stuff worked across the board, whether the child has autism, has behavioral issues, young, older teens. What I give you, and of course what I have is not the end all be all, but it will work across the board for your family. And so that, and as I said, I've been able to narrow down, like, what are these core things that kind of derail and cause conflict in a family?
Yeah.
So that's, where the
And it's probably the same for so many of us. Right?
Yeah, I mean, it is common. Like, this really is it. What I've seen with all these different families and relationship. A lot of this came out of, I own my own business too.
Yeah.
So it was like, and that's always great too when somebody goes, I tried this at work and it worked really good at work. And I'm like, well, that's because this has also come out of my experiences of owning a business and in working. It's relational stuff that works across the board.
And communication.
Yeah, it is. It's communicating, except with, like with families, we need to power it down into simple language where you're not throwing out 10 different words for the same behavior.
Yeah.
Let's keep it clean. This is what it is. You're not going to argue about it. Easy to own it.
Do you have certain, keeping up with the sports metaphor and being the guy, do you have plays that help you win? I mean, how does that work?
So that so we go into another part of it is the skills. So you got your fundamentals, like unless you have these in place, anything else I teach you really isn't going to work well.
Yeah.
And then we go into the skills piece of it, which is really interesting. When you spell out the first letter of each skill, it spells fear. And there's a long story about that I'll have to share sometime. But it's that healthy accountability piece, right? Like nobody speeds through Rio.
Yeah. Or what's the
Rosendale.
Place? Rosendale. I was going to say Rio.
Yeah, nobody speeds through Rosendale.
Yeah.
Okay, because what do they have in play? They have the expectation you will get a ticket if you go through there. They follow through and will give you a ticket. Okay, the accountability piece is you need to pay that ticket or we're going to up the ante. And there's the relationship piece then is what I tell parents is what that is all built on. Okay, your follow through, your expectations, the accountability, all is built on your relationship with your kid.
Okay.
So if you're frustrated that they're not meeting your expectations, that they don't care, I can guarantee it's probably because the relationship there is pretty weak. So that's the skills thing. That's again across the board of like analyzing of why is there this breakdown? Well, it's these 4 skills.
Yeah.
Where either one is really good, like I'm gonna hold you accountable, but the expectations are so clear.
Yeah.
So that's why there's this failing in this this argument. So. Again, having the privilege of being able to step back and just analyze and ask questions of like
a mission observer.
Yeah,
so to speak.
and then trying something, to see if it works. And then you brought up the plays and wins.
Yeah.
So we get through that, and those are the strategies. So there's this, a play. For example, one of it is categorizing behavior. We talked about this a little bit in the last episode, but I said there's 3 categories that all behavior lands in. Some of them can overlap, but it's either unkind or kind, unhelpful or helpful, safe or unsafe. So that's the play, is getting that common language.
Okay.
And the win is it lessens arguments because you can't argue against that, whereas if you use other words, they may argue against it because maybe we're using a feeling word. And they're arguing against, I don't feel that way. Or they don't understand the word. We're using a big word like disrespectful with a little kid, and they don't get it.
Yeah.
And so the win is that you will be, and that saves you like throwing out words that may not fit or that may be shaming words, and it keeps it to the behavior.
Yeah.
Okay, and when you address the behavior, then you're going to have change.
Okay.
So it's this, so that's one play. Keep the language simple.
Yep.
Put the behavior in one of these categories because it will fit. Or sometimes you can say, that was not helpful to me and it was unkind. Or that was unhelpful to me and it's unsafe. And that's what there are. So there's several plays, in the playbook where we break that down. So you have your play, I tell you what to do, and then explain what the win will be if you use that play.
Does it always work? Does it feel like it always works, or what happens when you get stuck?
So these strategies that are in the book, how do you define always works? Like you're always going to have a bad day.
What's success, right?
Yeah, you're going to have a kid that. They're just tired, they're hungry, and no matter what you say, we all have that, right? Right now in this moment, no matter what I say, this isn't going to go well. And you have a strategy to always come back around. Mm-hmm. Once things calm down, once things, are okay, you can come back and now use that language. Hey, help me understand what was going on. Because climbing up on that chair was unsafe. Mm-hmm. So you have something to come back to, even in the moment, if it's just like all falling apart. And I say, don't ever look at that as a failure. If you circle back around to it, because boy, is there some really amazing relationship building when somebody tracks you down and wants to repair the relationship. It's really, really powerful.
How do you get past, I know this happens in my family as growing up, and I'm sure my wife and I were like this at times too. Confrontation is scary to a lot of us, and not that this is confrontational, but it feels like confrontation sometimes when you're asking somebody even like, help me understand this, because how do you get an adult to get past that confrontational piece?
Yeah, and it's that demanding. We have to get back that we're not undermining because we get into this like, I'm your parent, do what I say because I said it.
You're right.
And that's demanding. And really think about it, who likes a boss like that? Okay? And it's taking that moment and that you are not undermining yourself by, if a kid's having a hot mess getting ready for school, you just drop down to your knees, help me understand what's up right now. I just don't want to go to school. I get it, but it's a have to. Is there something that would make it better? Can I bring a stuffed animal? Sure. It will have to stay in the car though. Is that going to work for you? And you just take that moment and leave on a calm thing instead of throwing everybody in the car, everybody's kicking and screaming. But that, it is a big mind shift. And I tell parents that. I'm like, this is a big mind shift.
And you got to practice.
Yeah, practice and to go from, let's not demand, let's teach. And it takes some intentionality. But then once you get it, that stuff happens quicker and quicker. You having a little meltdown in the morning, hey, help me understand what's going on. Oh, can I grab my stuffed animal? Yep, go grab it real quick, get in the car, boom, 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 and we're on our way.
Real briefly, you have a book that you've been working on that's coming out, and we don't have much time, but tell folks about that.
So I had the opportunity to collaborate with several other authors and contribute a chapter into Engaging Speakers, Voices of Truth. So that we just got the cover, so we are having a meeting on the 10th, so we'll be learning about the release date. But it was really an honor just to be able to get out my story and explain what I do, why I do what I do.
Well, we've learned a lot about why you do what you do and how you do it today in the parenting game. So it's been a lot of fun for me to ask you questions.
Well, thank you for taking over the host seat.
Well, just here to ask questions. And thank you all for watching. It's been great to be here, and we'll see you next time on the parenting game.
We're all familiar with the 3 whats: what it is, what it can do for me, and what does it cost. Tyler Rickenaut, Country Financial, can help you find the answers with insurance coverage to help protect what's most important to you, all at a price you can afford. So while you're juggling work and kids while trying to keep an eye on your financial future, Tyler Rickenaut, Country Financial will make sure they are the first ones there when you need them most. Many young parents leave pages of instructions for the sitter when they have their first date night after the baby is born. But only 36% of parents with minor children in the U.S. have any sort of plan to protect their children if they don't come back. Don't be part of that 64% without planning. At the Wilson Law Group, located in Madison, estate planning is all we do.
Thank you for watching The Parenting Game. All episodes of The Parenting Game are available on demand at sunprairiemediacenter.com.